statistic that completely changed how I think about immigration. Over 40% of African immigrants to Canada say their biggest challenge isn't finding a job or a place to live, it's dealing with isolation and culture shock. That's nearly half of newcomers struggling with something we rarely talk about.
That's such a profound insight, especially when you consider how much energy we put into solving the practical challenges of immigration.
You know, there's this beautiful African proverb that really captures it. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one person can embrace it. It speaks to how overwhelming cultural adaptation can be when you're trying to navigate it alone.
Let's talk about some real examples of this. I was struck by the story of that Nigerian father who missed his child's school meeting because he didn't know how to ask for time off.
That's exactly the kind of situation that highlights the hidden challenges. In Canadian workplace culture, asking for family time is completely normal. But if you come from a place where such requests might be seen as lazy or uncommitted, how would you know that?
And these cultural misunderstandings can have serious consequences, like that Ethiopian woman who ended up hospitalized because she thought asking for help showed weakness.
Well, that case really shows how these aren't just social issues, they can affect your physical and mental health. And what's fascinating is how these beliefs about self reliance can be so deeply ingrained that people will literally push themselves to the breaking point before seeking help.
So, how do we bridge that gap between cultural expectations and reality?
You know, it starts with understanding that adaptation isn't about erasing who you are. Take something as simple as small talk. In many cultures, it might seem superficial, but here in Canada, it's often the foundation for building trust and relationships.
That reminds me of how these unspoken rules extend to professional settings too. Things like email etiquette, meeting participation, and even how we handle disagreements.
Exactly right. And what's interesting is how these silent skills, as I call them, often determine success more than technical ability. I've seen brilliant professionals struggle because they haven't mastered the cultural code of Canadian workplaces.
Well, that brings up an interesting point about systems and institutions. Many newcomers seem hesitant to engage with official channels, even when they need help.
That's such a crucial observation, whether it's filing a police report, approaching a tenant board, or dealing with workplace harassment. There's often this fear that using these systems will somehow mark you as a troublemaker. But here's the thing, these systems aren't just for some people, they're for everyone.
How do you see this playing out in terms of maintaining cultural identity while adapting to new norms?
Well, I love this idea that adaptation is not assimilation. It's about expanding who you are, not replacing it. Think about time management. Being punctual in Canadian culture doesn't mean you have to abandon your cultural values, it's just adding another tool to your toolkit.
That's such a helpful way to frame it. It's like learning a new language without forgetting your mother tongue.
Exactly. And speaking of language, let's talk about how communication styles vary. In many cultures, saying maybe is a polite way of saying no, but here it's taken literally. Understanding these nuances can prevent so many misunderstandings.
That must create some real challenges around setting boundaries and managing expectations.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I think the advice about finding a mentor who's just 3 years ahead of where you want to be is so brilliant. They're close enough to remember the struggles, but far enough along to offer practical solutions.
And what about this suggestion to intentionally join activities outside your cultural circle once a month?
That's actually one of the most powerful strategies because it makes cultural integration manageable and measurable. Instead of this overwhelming goal of fitting in, you're giving yourself concrete, achievable targets.
Looking ahead, what do you think are the key takeaways for supporting newcomers through this journey?
Well, I think it comes down to three things. First, acknowledging that cultural adaptation is as challenging as any practical obstacle. Second, understanding that success often depends on mastering unwritten rules. And finally, recognizing that the goal isn't to become a different person, it's to expand who you already are while maintaining your core identity.